If you are thinking about making a move to the Twin Cities, today I am going to pull back the curtain on a little suburb in the Twin Cities metro. I'm talking about Hopkins, Minnesota. With its walkability, stellar location, fantastic affordability, and character, this place punches way above its weight class. But before you start dreaming about this quaint, small town-esque little suburb, let's make sure you have the full picture, because there are some trade-offs and some quirks that might surprise you, like some things on crime statistics and schools. We're going to get into the pros and cons of living in Hopkins, Minnesota right now. Alright, so we are going to get our pros and cons video rolling with the pros, but I want to encourage you guys, stick around and watch the cons, because I'll tell you right now, they really aren't what you think they are, especially at first glance. What you're going to find is a lot of these cons are the result of Hopkins sitting amongst some of the who's who here in the West Metro. And if we've never met, my name is Chris, by the way. Contact information is all right here. I am a Twin Cities native. We help people like you make a move here every single day. So if we can help you, drop us a line and reach out. I am excited to get into this, and pro number one for Hopkins, I am thrilled to talk about this because most of the surrounding suburbs can't say this. Hopkins has a main street. Hopkins feels like a community. Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Plymouth, even Edina, so many of these suburbs are great places to live and they bring a lot to the table, but they feel like suburbia. Hopkins' historic downtown Main Street was actually added to the Historical Registrar in 2022. It is a great place to take a stroll because you will find all kinds of cool little boutiques, bars, restaurants, mom and pop, auto shops, and antiques. It's just a really cool place. You can feel the culture and you can feel the sense of community. So pro number one for Hopkins, I know it's esoteric and it's hard to put numbers on, but Hopkins, with their main street, they have a vibe. I'm sorry that some of these heavy hitters like Tonka, Eden Prairie, and their planned suburban communities, they just can't match it. So pro number one for Hopkins, they've got some freaking character, they've got an actual historic main street, and there's a lot going on. Nobody around Hopkins has that. But pro number one was that historic main street. Pro number two for Hopkins is going to be its stellar location. We're gonna hop into the map here and I'm gonna show you exactly what I mean. Hopkins' location is a big deal, and I'll tell you right now, they beat just about everybody on location as far as I'm concerned. So let's just zoom out on the map here a little bit. You can see Minneapolis proper, and you can see Hopkins here just a little south and a little bit west of Minneapolis. And what makes Hopkins' location so good is they are in the middle of everything. Let's say you live out here in lovely Minnetonka, which would probably be considered a more desirable place than Hopkins. That's fine. Hopkins is much shorter to downtown Minneapolis. You've got a shorter commute to the airport. You are a shorter distance to Minneapolis's most famous chain of lakes. You're a shorter distance to Edina's 50th in France. You smoke Minnetonka on location. So let's flip it. You got Edina right down here. Very desirable, heavy-hitting suburb, just like Minnetonka. Yeah, Edina's a little bit closer to southwest Minneapolis and Minneapolis than Hopkins, but not by much. And guess what? If you want to go the other direction, if you want to get out of the city, get out, do some recreating on places like Lake Minnetonka, or just get way out west, guess who's closer now? Hopkins is closer. On the northern edge of Hopkins, you've got St. Louis Park, which means you've got a Costco and the shops at West End. Check out our video on St. Louis Park. You've got easy access to Eden Prairie Center, which is just a little bit south of Hopkins. So Hopkins is set up smack dab in the middle of the Southwest Metro. And when we get into some of these other pros like affordability, when you start combining Hopkins' preeminent location with just how far your money goes, man, it is a banging deal. And Hopkins' location, pro number two, is a big deal. We're on to pro number three, and I think we're doing pretty good here with Hopkins. We're banging out some that are pretty unique to the area, and that's going to continue with the third one. So one thing we need to be better at here in Minneapolis and our suburbs is diversity. We're working on it. Hopkins is ahead of the pack, I will tell you right now. So Hopkins, according to US Census data, comes in at just under 65% white and having about 36% people of color. Now, while that may not sound like a lot, as you can see here looking at some of our competing suburban brethren like Edina, Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Hopkins is doing a lot better on the diversity front than they are. Furthermore, another interesting tidbit for you, for my friends with children, Hopkins School District itself reports having a student base that is 50% diverse, so half white and half various mix of races and cultures. So Hopkins is way ahead of the curve as far as diversity. They also, this kind of ties into their sense of community vibe. You've got a number of different cultures, a number of different races, and they all come together very well. And I'm going to keep hammering on this. All you have to do is walk down Hopkins Main Street, check out the diversity of businesses, some of the restaurants, the mom and shop kind of places. Hopkins has their annual Raspberry Festival. This is a huge festival they have every summer, and the whole town comes out to celebrate this event together. Hopkins has a very diverse population relative to its surrounding communities, and they pull together very well. Niche.com actually gives it an A for young professionals and families on inclusivity. Hopkins definitely is that. So if you want a spot that's going to be a lot more diverse than its neighbors, again, Hopkins gets a pro there. Very diverse, very strong cultural vibe in this community. How are we feeling about Hopkins so far, my friends? I tell you what, the deeper we go into this, the more and more I am talking myself into this place. I had to sit down. I don't know if you noticed for pros 1 and 2, bobbing and weaving. So we're sitting down, we're calming down, we're getting into pro number 4. We're gonna crush it here again. This is Hopkins and affordability as it's gonna relate to the rest of the Twin Cities. So we're gonna chat about how we're gonna do this. So I'm just gonna break down 2 things as it relates to affordability in Hopkins. We're gonna look at the median price point for single family homes. And we're also going to look at just the cost of living index, and keep in mind, average for the United States cost of living index is 100. So if something is at 105, 5% more expensive than the national average. You ready? Watch how much Hopkins crushes this. So the Twin Cities region at large, right? Greater Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area, as of September 2025, median single-family home value was $425,000. That was appreciating at a rate of 3.7% year over year, and cost of living index was 107. So 107, Minneapolis is a bit more expensive than the national average. That's what we can take away from there. So now we're going to start comparing Hopkins. So Hopkins, all of this data, September 2025, median home value for a single family home, $415K, so $10,000 lower than the Twin Cities at large, appreciating at a rate of 5.9%, so about double the rate of the rest of the Twin Cities. Cost of living index at 106, so slightly cheaper than the Twin Cities region at large. Watch how this number improves when we start comparing it to what's around it. Hopkins compared to St. Louis Park, probably the most fair comparison. Median family home value for St. Louis Park, $419,000, appreciating at a rate 3.5% year over year, so half as much as Hopkins. Cost of living index 112 versus Hopkins 106, making it more expensive. Here's where we start to get real good. Minnetonka coming in, single family home value, September 2025, $600,000, appreciating at a rate of 3.4%, half of what Hopkins is appreciating at. Cost of living index at 122. Hopkins again was at 106, so both housing and general cost of living way more expensive. It's only going to get worse. Eden Prairie, median single family home value, September 2025, $627,000, appreciating at 2.3%, less than half the clip of Hopkins is year over year, and an index cost of living at 124, 24% more than the national average, and about 18% higher than Hopkins. You ready for the icing on the cake? Come on in, Edina, with a median single family home value, September 2025, clocking in at $885,000, literally more than double the price of Hopkins. And Edina kicks butt. Edina is appreciating at a rate of 10.5%. That is the highest on the chart. Hopkins was number 2, right there at 5.9, basically 6%. And Edina's index cost of living, 138, compared to Hopkins is 106. So Hopkins does real well compared to the metro at large, and when you start comparing them to the who's who, Edina, St. Louis Park, Tonka, all those guys immediately around them, Hopkins is absolutely slaughtering on a value standpoint. Anecdotally and just a local flair, this holds up. This is not a joke. I went with my girlfriend to Eden Prairie last weekend. I had a Diet Coke. She had one drink. The bill before tip was $24. $24 for one drink and a Diet Coke. You go to Hopkins, you can pull that same thing off for 10 bucks. It just shows up in prices of gas, drinks. This little things are much more affordable in Hopkins. And here's the sneaky rub, guys. You saw it with Pro number 2 location. Hopkins, you can go to Edina, Eden Prairie. You're right on the doorstep of all these places. You can open and roll into their school districts. The drive is real short. You get everything they get. You just get a way better cost of living and a significantly lower cost of housing. So Pro number 4, affordability for Hopkins, off the charts. We're gonna put a bow on our pros here for Hopkins. Again, our 4 big pros for Hopkins. Number 1 was that character and charm and just, man, feeling like a town, feeling like a community and not suburbia. 2 was that fantastic location. 3 is Hopkins' cultural diversity. 4 is, and check it out, 4 was that banging affordability. A few more for you just before we get into the cons, and we're gonna have a little bit of fun with these. Walkability. Hopkins is truly walkable. You can actually walk around and get places. Good luck walking around places like Eden Prairie trying to get anywhere. You're never gonna miss a parade again. With Hopkins' huge Raspberry Festival plowing right downtown Main Street, block parties, carnivals, and more, they're on your doorstep. Do you like beer? Hopkins has a ton of breweries opening up all the time, some on their main street, some scattered around town. Hopkins is very bikeable. They've got the LRT trail, Cedar Lake Trail running right through the center of Hopkins, so you can get almost anywhere on your bike from Hopkins. We already talked about the downtown charm. Really diverse dining scene, that's another pro, and it's not gonna cost you like it would in places like Edina or Minnetonka. You get plays and performances all year round thanks to Hopkins Center for the Arts. I love this one. There's free parking almost everywhere. You go downtown, a lot of these other places, and you are getting, especially downtown Minneapolis, everywhere you go, you are paying to park. Hopkins, it's the opposite. I have never paid for parking anywhere in Hopkins, so I think that's a pretty cool, sneaky good one. Last but not least, and we saw it, it's got sneaky investment potential, my friends. Whether you want a rental or just another property, something here or there. You saw it in the numbers. I will tell you, this is changing quickly. It blows my mind how much more affordable Hopkins is when you compare it to the suburbs around it. So just something to be in mind of. So that is the pros. Now we're gonna get into cons. And we're gonna get into con number 1 right out of the gate. And this might catch some people off guard, maybe even some of you locals. You can let me know if you were aware of this. So Hopkins homes are owner occupied at a rate of less than 40%. According to US Census data I could find, Hopkins is owner occupied about 38% of the time. So that means more than 60% of the homes in Hopkins are going to be renter occupied, investment property of some kind, a short-term rental possibly. But I think that's something to consider. And if you are a functioning human being, you will understand, like, I can't give you a bunch of numbers, hard data to tell you why that's relevant to your community. But just common sense dictates, right? If you've got a high rate of home ownership that are occupied by the owners themselves, they tend to have more of a vested interest in their communities and their properties and things like that. So I do think the relatively low rate, again, about 37.5% owner occupied, the low rate of owner occupied homes in Hopkins is definitely a strike against it. So con number 1 is going to be a low owner occupied home rate in Hopkins. Next, we're going to get into con number 2. And just to be clear, this is something we got to talk about as it relates to Hopkins. I'm not so sure it's a con, so just hear me out for a minute here. What we're going to talk about next is the school system. And if you look at sites like niche.com, Public School Review, National Center for Education Statistics, Hopkins School District does pretty good. For example, the school district itself is ranked number 22 out of 362 in all of Minnesota, according to niche.com. It is ranked 24 out of 370 for the most diverse school districts. And we talked about it in the pros. Hopkins does very good with diversity. So Hopkins gets some pretty good marks. The issue is Hopkins is nestled amongst the who's who of schools over in the West Metro, Hopkins is sitting right next to Edina, which consistently ranks in the top 10% in schools in the state. Same with Minnetonka and pretty much Eden Prairie as well. So I cannot tell you Hopkins has a bad school district. It doesn't. What I can tell you is it does not score as well as some of the others in its immediate vicinity. So let's just give you a few examples. So math proficiency in Hopkins, right? Number of students basically texting where they are expected to be at was at 41%. Contrast that to Edina, 71%. Minnetonka was at 73%. Eden Prairie only at 59%. That surprised me. Get it together, Eden Prairie. So you can see right there, Hopkins is a bit lower in math proficiency compared to the who's who next to him. Let's take a look at reading. Reading proficiency, Hopkins School District 52%, Edina 73%, Minnetonka 73%. Eden Prairie Schools 68%, St. Louis Park, depending on where you look, is right about 50%. So not bad, just not as good as some of these guys around it. Graduation rate, Hopkins 87%, Edina 95%, Minnetonka 98% plus, Eden Prairie 92%, St. Louis Park 87%. So again, Hopkins does not have bad numbers. It does not have numbers as good as those districts immediately around it. So do your own research. Hopkins has some cool stuff going for it. They are by far more diverse than any of these other school districts we just mentioned. So I gotta label it as a con because it's gotta go in one of these categories for this video. Compared to the school districts around it, Hopkins does not score as well. However, you can open enroll. If you live in Hopkins, you can open enroll to Minnetonka, to Edina, Eden Prairie. You've got options. Con number 3 is pretty cut and dry, so we're gonna hammer this one out pretty quick. So one thing that makes Hopkins unique is its size. It's about 4 square miles and about 20,000 people, so it's much smaller than its other suburban cousins. I'm getting tired of using the word brethren. That can work for or against you, right? With that compactness of Hopkins, yes, it brings that walkability, it brings charm, it brings that small town vibe. The negative side of that means you are not getting wide open spaces, you are not getting big lots. For the most part, there's exceptions, but you are not getting big lots and sprawling subdivisions. So if you are dreaming of half-acre yards, 3-car garages, and a little elbow room from your neighbor, you might find Hopkins is a little bit more tight than you want it to be. The housing stock in Hopkins, for the most part, is more modest. Think bungalows, mid-century homes. You're gonna get a lot of 1.5 stories, 2-3 bedrooms between 1,500 and 2,000 square feet. And the lot sizes are pretty small, kind of 0.15 to 0.2 generally speaking. It's a pretty uniform community. Again, there's exceptions, but that's for the most part. So, it's not the place for buyers looking for a big new construction, a big lot, or a lot of space from your neighbors. If that's what you're looking for, you're probably more Minnetonka, Edina, one of these surrounding communities, because that is not what Hopkins is. Our last con for Hopkins is going to be crime, but just don't go anywhere, hear me out, because this one feels a lot like the school district. So I'm gonna run you through some numbers here, and then you can make the best decisions for you. So the data I'm gonna share with you is 2023 FBI data per 1,000 residents, just for a frame of reference and where we're getting this data from, okay? So Hopkins' violent crime rate is at 2.85 per 1,000 residents. Now, that puts it 1% above Minnesota at 2.8, but 25% below the US at large. So compared to the nation, Hopkins is doing very well. Property crime, 18.5 incidents per 1,000. That is 12% under Minnesota's 21 and 6% below the national average. Total crime in Hopkins lands at 21.4. That is 10% below Minnesota itself and 8% under the US at large. So safer than the nation and on par or better than most of the state. Here's where it gets tricky, and it's just like the school district. Hopkins is surrounded by, frankly, we're gonna get cheesy and call them safety studs. Eden Prairie is freaking crushing it. Eden Prairie is coming in violent crime 0.64, 77% below Minnesota. Minnetonka is right there at 1.44, which is half the state average. Edina is not far behind. St. Louis Park, on the other hand, is running a lot higher. Violent crime in St. Louis Park is at 3.5, which is 26% above Minnesota. And St. Louis Park's property crime is also 47% over the state average. We know where we're going when we get to cons with St. Louis Park. So the bottom line is Hopkins beats national averages handily in most categories. It holds steady with most of Minnesota. The issue is it's surrounded by places like Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, which are absolutely just knocking it out of the park when it comes to some of these crime and safety statistics. So I can tell you, as a guy who lives on the border of Hopkins, I have no qualms about going into Hopkins day or night, really any time of day. I have never felt unsafe, but just want to share with you what the data says. That is about going to do it for our cons with Hopkins. Again, going back through them quickly. Con number 1 was a very high renter occupancy rate. Number 2 was schools, but make sure you watch that one because it's not fair to say Hopkins has bad schools. It's not the case. Number 3 con was Hopkins' limited size and scale, and number 4 was relative to its exceedingly safe peer group, Hopkins has a little bit of a higher crime rate. A few other fun ones just to think about if you're gonna move into Hopkins. There's no Target. I don't care. That's a big deal to some people. There is no Target in Hopkins. There, in fact, is really not many big box retailers. If that's a big deal to you, drive to Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Edina, St. Louis Park, or any of the other suburbs that border Hopkins. It's a real easy fix. Downtown parking is free. It can be quirky at times. It can be busy. It can be challenging on the weekends. I don't care. I think the free part overrides it, but just something to know about. Loud train horns. There are train tracks that do run through Hopkins, so from time to time, if a freight train horn drives you nuts, Hopkins might not be the place for you. And just their downtown is awesome, but it can get busy. Like during the Raspberry Festival, the downtown streets are clogged. I think it's a fun, festive environment. If you're a little claustrophobic, that might be something to think of. So that's going to wrap up our cons for Hopkins, Minnesota. What did you think? You can probably tell by the way I talked about it through the whole time. I am a fan of Hopkins. Yes, like any community, it has some cons, it has some challenges, but if you just watch the video, what you notice is that Hopkins is sitting amongst some basically geniuses in the West Metro around places like Minnetonka, Edina, and Eden Prairie. So when you start comparing things like school districts and crime data, Hopkins still does very well. It's just not doing as well as those cities right next to it. So I think the cons needed to be taken with a grain of salt. And furthermore, most of these cons can be overcome. Like the homes, for example. I described them as being smaller lots, not a lot of big homes. That is the case for Hopkins, but there are parts of Hopkins, the area around St. Albans Street, for example, where you can find some very large, very luxurious homes. So it's just a matter of being smart about where you're looking and understanding that there's opportunity in the right place if you look at it. The more I research Hopkins, I spend a lot of time there personally. I think it's a great place. It's so affordable compared to the rest of the West Metro. It's got a great location, and what you don't have in Hopkins, you can easily drive off to Edina or Minnetonka and get. So, if you like the video, please give us, it helps us a lot. My name is Chris. Contact information is here. It is also down below. If I can answer anything for you, if you're thinking of making a move, give us a call, drop us a line. You locals, love to hear from you too. What did I miss about Hopkins? What do you like? What do you not like? My name is Chris. Thanks for joining me. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you again real soon.